It's time for another episode of Gospel Preaching Live, brought to you by the Kearney Church of Christ, which meets at 406 North Clark in Kearney, Missouri. Make plans to come out and visit the brethren, who look forward to seeing you. And now the host of Gospel Preaching Live, Richard Dodson.
Okay, welcome to the Thursday edition of Gospel Preaching Live. I'd invite you to take note of the phone number and the email address at the bottom of your screen. If you have any questions, you can call or text the phone number 816-686-9517 or drop an email at gospelpreachinglive@gmail.com, and I'll try to assist you with that question. Perhaps you'd have a request to hear a sermon. Whatever it might be, I'll try to do what I can for you. Tonight, we're going to talk about leaving your teens. And that is a very important topic to me right now because I have a son that's about to turn 17 years old. So he's going to be entering in a few years the adulthood. And that can be easy for some and it can be hard for other people. I thought tonight what we do is look at what the scriptures have to say about it, and then we can draw our conclusions from that. But it's a very difficult time, as I said, for some people. They have been raised their whole life with their parents making decisions for them. And of course, they go to school where everything is structured. And now all of a sudden they're said, okay, here's your diploma. You're on your own. You're going to have to make all your own decisions. You're going to be responsible for yourself. And don't mess up because you're accountable. And all of a sudden, that can be a really scary thing because young people will look at that and they'll say, I can make a bad decision right now and it's going to affect the rest of my life. And so what do they do? It's a very scary thing. And so again, I thought we would just look at what the scriptures teach. And the text for our lesson this evening is going to be taken from 1 Timothy chapter 4. And we're going to read verse 12. Paul, the Apostle Paul, was writing to the young evangelist Timothy, and he says, let no one despise you for your youth, but set the believers an example in speech and conduct and love and faith and in purity. I thought that would be a good place for us to start, because if a young person, as he starts entering into his life as an adult, will set themselves as an example to believers in speech, in conduct, in love, in faith, and in purity, then things should work well for them. That's what Paul's telling Timothy to do, and I think that's what we should be telling our children today, what they should be doing as they enter into their lives as adults. So I got a few things to say about each one of these, but these are going to be our points for this evening. And we'll see what the scriptures have to say about these things and then try to glean some understanding. And hopefully, while I'm not giving you a complete answer this evening, hopefully it will be something that if you're a young teenager or one that's entering into adulthood, that you can learn something from it and be able to apply in your life. All right, let's talk about our speech. That was something that Timothy was supposed to be careful about so he would be an example to the believers. We're going to look at Proverbs 17 and verse 28, James chapter 1, verse 19 and 20, Proverbs chapter 21 and verse 23, and then Colossians chapter 4 and verse 6. In Proverbs chapter 17 and verse 28, let me make myself small so you guys can see the screens a little bit better. But it says, even a fool who keeps silent is considered wise. When he closes his lips, he is deemed intelligent. That's one of the things that I should have known when I was a young man, is that I should have kept my mouth shut more and listened. Because when someone opens their mouth, they usually they're thinking pretty highly about themselves. We need to be quiet, and that applies really all throughout your life. You need to be taking in more than what you're putting out. And notice what he says, a fool who keeps silent is considered wise. People will notice that you're not one who is forthcoming, as a lot of people are. And so people are going to think you must be one smart guy. Well, that's what you want people to think. I mean, you don't want people to think you're a fool. So the best thing to do is to listen to the scriptures and keep your mouth shut and listen, take things in. There's no reason to have to divulge everything that comes into your mind. In James chapter 1, verse 19 through 20, James says this. He said, my beloved brothers, let every person be quick to hear, slow to speak, slow to anger. For the anger of man does not produce the righteousness of God. You're going to have to be slow to speak because you're going to be accountable for the things that you say. You're going to be accountable to God for all that you say, but also man holds you accountable. And being held accountable anymore to man, oh boy, I tell you right now, that's a hard thing because notice what's taking place out in the world today. They're going back to when people were young and finding things that they said, and they're holding them accountable. So you want to be very careful about the things that you say, because you don't know when that's going to happen to you. You could say something when you're 20, and then at 50, they can find that on the internet or someplace, and they're going to hold you accountable for what you said. Now, before you make light of that, keep in mind, people are losing their jobs in that very scenario that I'm putting before you. So you need to be slow to speak. Be very thoughtful about what you're going to say. And if that's something that you're willing to stand behind, because again, you will. I mean, whether or not you want to or not, you're going to stand behind it. In Proverbs chapter 21 and verse 23, the writer said, whoever keeps his mouth and his tongue keeps himself out of trouble. The things that you say, you're going to be known by. People are going to listen to what you say, and then they're going to make a determination. Well, this guy's really smart, or he's a fool. So keeping your tongue helps you in that regard, because of all the judgments that people are going to make that you can't control. So you want to make sure that you're very careful about what you say, just because of public perception. Then you also want to be careful about what you say, because God will hold you accountable. So keeping your mouth is an important thing. Taking things in. You know, I've always told my son, and I've told other people, there are things about yourself that you don't need to divulge to every person, because they just don't need to know. I mean, it's something that can get you into trouble. Somebody who starts making money, when they go around bragging about making money, well, guess what? They face trouble, because all of a sudden people start thinking, well, you know, I need to be around him so I can get some of that money. And so all of a sudden he starts finding himself surrounded with people who are trying to get what he's earned, when he would have been better to keep his mouth shut and not advertise it. That's what I mean about trouble. Trouble will find you unless you keep your mouth shut. So it's a very good thing to do when you're young, is to get into that practice. When you do speak as the Bible is telling you to speak. Colossians chapter 4 and verse 6 says, let your speech always be gracious, seasoned with salt, so that you may know how you ought to answer each person. Find someone that you think is a pretty smart person and watch how they speak. Listen for when they speak and how they speak. And you'll learn a lot. And then try to copy that. That's something that you would help you in your life. It'll help you in your job. It'll help you at church. It will help you with your neighbors, to be very careful about the things you say. When you start bad mouthing people behind their back, don't think that that's not going to get known. It does. The Bible makes that very clear. A little bird's going to hear you, and they're going to go around. They're going to talk about it with somebody. That's the way it happens. So the best thing that you can do is to control your speech, and you can do that. Had a comment. My brother-in-law, Chris Peltz, said reputations matter. Yes, it does, and he's making a very good point, and I thank him for that. Reputations do matter because of your influence. It's going to help you in the church. As Jesus said, if our reputations aren't any good, then what good are we? We're to be cast out and walked on, by men. We need our reputations, and our speech controls so much of that. So be very careful about the things that you say, because it will come back to haunt you. I can promise you that. Now, I want to give you, this is a little segment I'm trying with this sermon. It's called Helpful Information. Each one of these points, I'm going to draw some type of application. And in this one, I want you to notice how important it is to keep good company. And why I put that with your speech, I'm putting that here because it's important that you surround yourself with people who are very careful about what they say, because it's going to rub off on you. In Proverbs chapter 13 and verse 20, he says, whoever keeps company with the wise becomes wise, but the companion of fools suffers harm. Now, if you're hanging around people who are very aware of the words that they use, and they're careful with what they say, and they respect the words that they're choosing, then that's going to rub off on you. And so that's exactly what the scripture's teaching here. It says, whoever keeps company with wise becomes wise, but the companion of fools suffers harm. A good example of this is Rehoboam in 1 Kings chapter 12, and also in 2 Chronicles chapter 10. I'll let you read about Rehoboam, but needless to say, he was a king. He came after Solomon's son, and he had the chance to unite the kingdom of Israel with Judah. Jeroboam and the northern Israel had come down, and that basically they said, look, if you're good to us and don't put a lot of taxes on us, we'll come back and we'll serve you. And Rehoboam listened to the advisors of his fathers, and they were like, listen, if you're good to these people, the good things will happen. But then he went to the children that he grew up with, and they said, nah, you be tough with these people, and you tell them you're going to be meaner to them than your father was. Well, that he didn't unite the kingdom. It didn't go well for Rehoboam, and I'll let you read that story. But he listened to the fools instead of listening to the wise. The best thing that you can do is to surround yourself with success. If you see people who are successful Christians, then be around them. Spend as much time as you can with them, because success breeds success. If you look at the people who are successful in business, they surround themselves with people who are successful. It's if you want to be a boss of a business, you want people working for you who are smart. Surround yourself that way. And so you want to go to heaven. That's your goal in life, is to get to heaven. So you want to make sure you're around wise Christians, people who are like-minded, who want to do that very thing. And so who are you going to listen to? You're going to listen to those people. You're going to watch, and you're going to listen. Something that I think that can help you in this matter. All right, let's talk about our conduct. That was one of the points that Timothy brought up. Let's look at Proverbs chapter 20 and verse 11, and 1 Peter chapter 1, verse 14 through 16. In Proverbs 20 and verse 11, it says, even a child makes himself known by his acts, whether his conduct is pure and upright. This is kind of getting into what my brother-in-law Chris Peltz was saying. You're going to be known by what you do. You really are. The very things that you do in this life, people are going to know you for. And so you want to make sure you're acting right. Your conduct is good. In First Peter chapter 1, verse 14 through 16, it tells us what we should be doing. He says, as obedient children, do not be conformed to the passions of your former ignorance. But as he who has called you is holy, you also be holy in all your conduct, since it is written, you shall be holy, for I am holy. You know, just because you're leaving your father and mother's house doesn't mean you're leaving rules. We live with rules. Adults live with rules, whether they want to acknowledge that or not. And so if you accept the authority of Jesus Christ and conform to his rules, then you will be known by that. But if you choose to disobey, as many young people do, once they get out of their parents' house, it's like, hey, I'm free. I can do what I want to do. And the first thing they do is to rebel. They get out and they start doing the very things that they wanted to do that their parents were keeping them from doing. And guess what happens? They earn a reputation. People start looking upon them. And let me tell you something. The sins of your youth, people remember them. The very things that you do when you're young, even if you repent, when you get older, people are going to remember those things that you did. They don't forget. And so it would help you as a Christian to be obedient to the Father all the days of your life. You're going to be held accountable for that anyway. But always conduct yourself as one who is under the rule of Jesus Christ, because you're going to show yourself to be responsible. But if you start rebelling, you're going to show yourself to be irresponsible. And of course, then you're going to make your parents feel shame. And that's not something that they deserve. So make sure that we be careful of the things that we do. Now, your helpful information. Matthew 7 and verse 12, the golden rule. So whatever you wish that others would do to you, do also to them, for this is the law and the prophets. If you want others, people, to respect you, then you need to respect them. You show respect to all men, and they will respect you. And I know there are some people living lives that it's very hard to respect. You don't have to respect the life that they live, but you can respect them. And you can show every person the respect that God wants you to give them, because they have a soul. And you need to treat them as the way you would wish to be treated, no matter what they're doing with their life. If you do that, then that's what you'll be known for. And that's something that will help you down the road. Okay, let's talk about love. Love is something that your life, and hopefully you've heard sermons on love. In 1 Corinthians chapter 13 is a good chapter to go for love. But love is something that you need to have a passion for everything you do. Christians, likewise, we need to have a passion for Jesus. We need to have a passion for our fellow man. We need to have a passion for ourselves. And that needs to be reflective in the lives that we live. Let's look at Matthew chapter 6, verse 19 through 21, and then Romans chapter 12 and verse 9 and 10. Jesus said in the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew 6, verse 19, do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal, but lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroys and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Now, the reason I put that there, because when he says where your treasure is, he's talking about what you love. That's what you're going to be doing. You're going to be focused around the very thing that you love. So if you love Jesus and you love the things associated with Jesus, his creation, the people that he made, then you're going to live your life reflecting that. You're going to be thinking about the very things that Jesus and what Jesus loved. because you're going to want to help Jesus, because that's where your treasure is. And if you do that, guess what's going to happen? You're going to be laying up for yourselves treasures in heaven. But not all men do that. A lot of men, their treasure is selfishness. And they live their life in such a way to feed their selfishness. They want money. They want the various things that's going to enable them to get the things that they want. And they're willing to walk on people to do that very thing. People are not what they love. It's themselves. Where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. So start off with it being Jesus Christ. And then from that point, you're going to love everything that Jesus made. And that would be all the earth and his creation. And that's where your life needs to be focused on. Your life needs to be focused on Jesus and his creation. In Romans chapter 12, verse 9 through 10, Paul said, let love be genuine, abhor what is evil, hold fast to that which is good. And then he says, love one another with brotherly affection, outdoing one another, showing honor. So in other words, this goes back to loving your neighbor as yourself. You need to be thinking about your brethren. How can you honor them? How can you build them up? It's one of the big arguments about why Christians should assemble, is it's an opportunity to build their brother up. And in so doing, they show honor to them. They're willing to sacrifice what they want to do in order to take time out of their life. I say what they want to do. That's what they want to do. But they're willing to, they could be selfish. And maybe they could go to a football game or go bowling or whatever, fishing. But they don't do that. They come to church. And the reason is it's an opportunity for them to show honor to their brethren. In a sense, they're telling their brethren, hey, I come here because I love Jesus, and I know how important you are to Jesus, so I have come here to do what I can to serve you. That's why we go to church. We go to church to serve Jesus, and in so doing, we serve our brethren. We're showing honor to them. We're thinking more highly of them than we are thinking of ourselves. That is genuine love. And that's where our treasure needs to be. And if you commit to that when you're young, that practice will more than likely stay with you all the days of your life. Habits are hard to break. And I've seen brethren, their habits toward coming to church, for instance, it's really bad. They come every so often, though they're late quite a bit. Don't get into that kind of bad habit. Start off as you are now responsible adult. Start off by making sure you get yourself to church because you love the brethren. You love Lord and you love the brethren. In 1 Corinthians chapter 13 and verse 1 through 3, this is your extra. He says, if I speak in the tongues of men and of angels but have not love, I am a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. And if I have prophetic powers and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have all faith so to remove mountains and have not love, I am nothing. And if I give away all that I have and I deliver my body to be burned, but have not love, I gain nothing. This is your Lord speaking to you. And what's he saying? He's saying, if you don't have me first in your life, if you don't love me with all your heart and all your soul, and your neighbor likewise, then you're nothing. Your life is nothing. So what he's saying is you could be the richest man in the world and be involved in helping so many people with your money. But if you don't have love for your fellow man, you're nothing. Absolutely nothing. And if you love your fellow man, if you love Jesus, what are you going to try to do? You're going to try to save souls. How are you going to do that? With the gospel. It's so important that we all love the Lord with all our hearts and with all our soul. And look, if you do that, you're going to be able to accomplish much in this world. And those works go with you. The money you make It'll go to somebody else when you die. You don't get to take that. But the very things that you do based on your love for Jesus, they're going to go with you. So make sure you apply love to your life. And then faith. I can't begin to talk about how important faith is. Faith is going to be hard. The first steps of faith is very difficult for young people, and you're going to be tested right off the bat. If you look in the animal kingdom, the Bible speaks of the devil being a roaring lion. Well, who do the roaring lions go after in the animal kingdom? The young. They see them as easy prey. They're not as knowledgeable. They're not as strong. And so the devil, he's going to want to stop you immediately before you have the chance to become wise and strong. And so to exercise your faith is very important. Let's look at Proverbs 3, verse 5 and 6, and then Isaiah chapter 40, verse 28 through 31. Proverbs says, trust in the Lord. Proverbs chapter 3, verse 5. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make straight your paths. Yes, there's going to be times, and that's part of walking by faith. You don't understand why the Lord is telling you what to do, but you obey. Why? Because you're trusting in the Lord. You're walking by faith. You'll understand by and by, but for now, you just believe what the Lord says and you do it. You trust in him with all your heart. You don't lean upon your own understanding. That's what the devil wants to do. He'll come along and tell you a lie like he did with Adam and Eve. They leaned on their own understanding. The Lord gave them that commandment to not eat the forbidden fruit, nor to even touch it, or they'll die. And the devil comes along and says, you're not going to die. And he knows if you take that, you'll be like gods, knowing good and evil. And what did they do? They didn't trust in the Lord with all their heart. They started thinking about that lie, and they started leaning on their own understanding, and that's when they got into trouble. Don't make that mistake. Don't make that mistake. Walk in faith. Trust in the Lord. In Isaiah 40 and verse 28, the writer says, have you not known? Have you not heard? The Lord is the everlasting God, the creator of the ends of the earth. He does not faint or grow weary. His understanding is unsearchable. He gives power to the faint, and to him who has no might, he increases strength. And then he says this, even youth shall faint and be weary, and young men shall fall exhausted. But they who wait for the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. Yes, young men get tired. They don't get as tired as I get, but they do get tired. But the Lord never does. He never does. And if you walk by faith, the Lord is going to renew your strength. He will build you up. There's going to be days in this life that's going to be hard. You're going to face trouble. Your faith is going to be tested. That's because you're getting weary. I mean, it's hard sometimes. But the Lord will renew your strength if you wait on him. And when he says those who wait on the Lord, he's talking about showing faith. Believe in the promises of God and be obedient, and he'll be there for you. He always has. Yeah, he's been all throughout the scriptures. He's never abandoned anyone he said he was going to be with. Now, in Proverbs chapter 1, verse 8 and 9, your helpful information, the writer said, hear, my son, your father's instruction, and forsake not your mother's teaching, for that they are graceful garland for your head and pendants for your neck. What he's saying is that your father and mother, they were your age one time. And what you need to understand is that you're not their age. They know what you're feeling, but you don't know what they're feeling. And they love you. And so they have this teaching that they can give you. And Christian parents are telling their children, be faithful, wait on the Lord. He'll be there for you. Listen to your parents' instructions. They've been where you've been, and they can help you. If you listen to what you should be trusting, then you'll find out that the Lord was with you as he was with them. He'll be with you. You just need to walk in faith. And then finally, purity. Purity is a difficult time for teens. There's a lot of temptations that are out there. We're going to deal mainly with these verses about the sexual temptations, but really we can apply these things to any temptation. Let's go to Hebrews 13 and verse 14, and then 1 Corinthians 6 and verse 15 through 20. Notice what the writer says. Let marriage be held in honor among all, and let the marriage bed be undefiled, for God will judge the sexually immoral and adulterous. You are going to be tempted to have sex outside of marriage. You're going to be judged for that. The Lord's going to hold you accountable. And so you need to keep that in mind, that it's wrong. You should not be having sex outside of marriage. Now, like I said, you can apply any temptation that you're going to face in with this passage, but you need to be making sure you keep yourself pure, because the Lord wants you to be pure. In 1 Corinthians chapter 6 and verse 15 through 20, speaking of these sexual sins, notice what Paul told the Corinthians. And they lived in a very corrupt society. Corinth was not, that was a town that was known for prostitutes and things of that nature. It wasn't a good place. But notice what he says. Do you not know that your bodies are members of Christ? Shall I then take the members of Christ and make them members of a prostitute? Never. Or do you not know that he who is joined to a prostitute becomes one body with her? For as it is written, the two will become one flesh. But he who is joined to the Lord becomes one spirit with him. And then he says this, flee sexual immorality. Run away from it. Every other sin a person commits is outside the body, but the sexually immoral person sins against his own body. Or do you not know that your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit within you, whom you have from God? You are not your own. You are bought with a price. So glorify God in your body. You need to remember these verses. Flee sexual immorality. Don't embrace it, because we need to be one with the Lord. And believe me, the Lord will be there to take care of you. And I know that temptation is strong. There is an avenue in which that can be relieved, and that's through marriage. And if you are one that wants to be married, pray to the Lord about it. If it's his will, then he'll help you find a mate. But if it's not his will, you need to be prepared for that as well. Either way, you're not allowed to go out and be sexually immoral. You need to flee from that. It's not a good thing. Keep yourself pure. Now, your helpful information is Proverbs 6:23 through 26. He says, the commandment is a lamp and the law is a light. The reproofs of instruction are the way of life, to keep thee from the evil woman, from the flattery of the tongue of a strange woman. Lust not after her beauty in thine heart, neither let her take thee with her eyelids. For by means of a whorish woman, a man is brought to a piece of bread, and the adulteress will hunt for the precious life. Look in the world of politics. How many people's political careers were brought down because they had an affair? Absolutely. It happens all the time. Christians are no different. I know Chris was watching. We were talking earlier this week about preachers who commit the act of adultery or fornication, and what happens to preachers, how they lose their jobs where they're preaching it. That happens. That's a real thing. And this passage is, I mean, it's right there. You're going to be you're going to be brought down for doing these kind of things. Don't do it. Keep yourself pure, and you'll be thankful in the end. You really will. All right, so as you're leaving your teens, remember, Timothy was told to be an example in speech, in his conduct, in love, in faith, and in purity. If you do these things as well, you're going to live a successful life. Just make sure you apply yourself to doing these things, and you'll be all right. All right, the lesson's yours. I'll leave you with the final thing that Solomon told us. Hear the conclusion of the whole matter in Ecclesiastes 12:13. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. For God shall bring every work into judgment and every secret thing, whether it be good or whether it be evil. Solomon set out in the book of Ecclesiastes to see what was the most fulfilling life. And everything was vanity. He really never could find anything that was worthwhile. His conclusion was the best thing that you can do is to fear God and keep his commandments. And so learn from that. That's not my words, that's God's words. Fear God and keep his commandments. Whatever your hands find to do, do it heartily, but do it for the Lord. Keep his commandments. If you do these things, you're going to have a great life. And in the end, you'll have a home in heaven. Okay, that's your lesson this evening. I hope it's been beneficial to you. If you're in the Kearney area, come and worship with us, please. 406 North Clark, Kearney, Missouri, 406 North Clark. We meet at 9:30 Sunday morning, 10:30 for worship. 9:30 is our Bible study. You can learn all about the church by going to www.kearneychurch.com. Now, another work of the church is every Sunday morning at 7 o'clock, there is preaching on KPGZ 102.7 FM in Kearney, Missouri. You can listen to a sermon at 7, and you'll have time to put your shoes on and come down to the church building and worship with us. So I'd like to invite you, if you like hearing lessons, to tune into the radio station. If you're outside the Kearney area, you can use your mobile device or tune in online. They do stream their signal, so you'd be able to listen to a lesson at that time. Sowers with Swords is a internet show that I'm on with my brother-in-law, Chris Belts, the minister of the Southside Church of Christ in Springfield, Missouri. And we study the Bible in light of what certain issues. And I'd like to invite you to join in. That's every Tuesday at 10 o'clock. And you can watch that live on Kearney's Facebook or YouTube channel. And you can find that at kearneychurch.com. Berean Spirits also comes on every Thursday at 10 o'clock. That's me and 4 other preachers, where we study the Bible together. And we do that trying to copy what we read about in Acts 17 regarding the Bereans. Again, we'd invite you to join us every Thursday at 10 o'clock, and you can get access to our Facebook and YouTube channels at kearneychurch.com, as well as a link to the Berean Spirits YouTube channel. So I think that would help you. Okay, that's all I have for you this evening. Our next edition will be this Sunday at 6 p.m. I'd like to invite you to join in at that time. Until then, remember, this is the day the Lord has made. Let's rejoice in it and be glad.
This has been Gospel Preaching Live. Join us each week as truth is taught, faith is examined, and beliefs are challenged. Be sure and hit the like button so you can be notified of future episodes. And to watch past episodes, go to our website, kearneychurch.com. This has been a work of the Kearney Church of Christ.